Okay, Hotep family. First and foremost, I'd just like to thank the organizers of the Marcus Garvey Institute for allowing me to present at this year's conference. My name is Omowale Afrika. I am the Vice Shanuti of the Philadelphia chapter of Afrocentricity International. I also serve as the co-chair of the youth committee for our particular chapter. Today, I will be presenting on nationhood training. The subtext from our presentation is deploying a 21st century grassroots model for youth development. So I'd like to start my presentation today with a quote from Dr. Amos Wilson, and the quote reads as follows: "The true nationalist not only educates the wounded egos of adults, but also educates its young. We see many of our nationalist organizations concerning themselves weekend after weekend with the education of grown people. That's fine and is a part of the education and advancement of the race, but we must recognize that we have to educate our young as well, and that the true survival of the race must couple the education of the parents with the education of the children. Nationalist organizations that are concerned almost exclusively with the education of adults and not with the education of children are practicing a nationalism that is incomplete. A true nationalist knows he must educate, as the word nationalism implies, the nation and everyone in it." So with that being said, today I will be presenting on the recent youth engagement model that we've rolled out within Afrocentricity International, starting with the Philadelphia chapter, that is heavily influenced by the model that was developed by the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and the UNIA. So if you look within the Constitution and bylaws of the organization, the UNIA and ACL, you will see that in this section that pertains to the training of young people, or juveniles as they were referred to in the Constitution, there's a section that refers to cadet training for young members of the organization ages 13 to 16. And I have it highlighted here on the screen. I'll just read very quickly. The focus of the training for young members of the UNIA at the time was on them learning the rituals of the organization. They were to receive military training on flag signaling, but also history, Negro history. And last but not least, the class was supposed to be taught by someone within the African Legion, which was one of the auxiliary units within the UNIA and ACL that could teach young people military tactics, right? So Garvey wanted the young people to have a whole and complete training and or education. This is not at all uncommon. Even within the United States today, we see that this particular nation, right, and every nation has a program of training that is geared at raising up young people to protect the nation, young people to feed the nation, and ultimately young people to lead the nation, right? So whether it's the Boy Scouts or the Eagle Scouts, of which the large majority go on to serve in the military, or programs like the Junior ROTC or the ROTC at the collegiate level. ROTC standing for the Reserve Officer Training Corps, right? Nations that are future-minded and future-oriented understand that the children are their future, or the youth are their future. So therefore, they painstakingly do what is necessary to prepare their young people to serve in the future. Not all the time is this education that people are receiving. If we are not a self-determining people, right, the education that we receive in is not always in our best interests. Yeah, Dr. Leonard Jeffries always states that for us to be African-centered or Afrocentric means that we put our own values, our own interests, and our own principles ahead of everyone else's, right? We are race first, or we are self first. So in order to propel ourselves into the future and ensure our survival, we have to be thinking nation, right? Because nation, as Garvey told us, is the thing that will protect the interests of the group, and we have to develop a class of people within the group that are capable of, again, protecting, feeding, healing, and leading the nation. This is the focus of education, right? When we talk about education for self-determination and self-actualization, this is a true leadership education that you are trying to build a generation that can continue to advance the interests and protect the interests of your people. Unfortunately, we as African people today are not a self-determining people. Everywhere that we are colonized, and our education is controlled by our enemies, by our oppressors, by our opponents. And therefore, the types of education we receive is education that is meant to continue facilitating our domination and to create a class of Black people who live among us that assist in the facilitation of that domination. So if we are ever to reverse that, we will need a type of education that truly pushes our youth towards, concepts of self-determination, concepts of nationhood, right? Concepts of survival. I wanted to highlight here very quickly an education initiative that was started by the Obama administration back in 2010. That this particular initiative is referred to as the Young African Leaders Initiative. And they make no qualms about it, that the goal of this particular initiative is to create and or develop a class of Black people on the African continent that will be loyal to the interests of the American empire and or Western capitalist interests. I'll just read the sections here that I have highlighted for the viewers today. So it says that today, it is estimated that Africans ages 15 to 35 make up roughly 40% of the continent's population, making Africa the most youthful continent. Clearly, an emergent and integrated Africa can be fully realized only by mobilizing and equipping its demographic advantage, its large population of youth, to help drive Africa's integration, peace, and development agenda. I want to emphasize the development agenda, right? Because everyone has a development agenda for Africa, with the exception of Africans, right? So the the Western world, whether it be America or any of the, former colonial nations, or the Eastern world, whether it be China, whether it be, India, whether it be, Lebanon, Turkey, all these people, Israel, all these people have a plan for developing Africa and Africa's resources to benefit their own people, but not for the benefit of Africa. So if we as African people are to carve out a space on this earth for ourselves, then we have to be self-determining, and we have to develop a class of young people that are capable of meeting the challenges of the 21st century. I just like to point out one last thing on this particular, this is on the government's website. So if you search YALI, Y-A-L-I, I believe it's yali.gov. But if you search the website, you can come to this page where you read about it, and they also promote this as Pan-Africanism and or Afrocentric perspectives. I would argue that it's neither or. It is actually it's a false sense of Pan-Africanism, right? It's using the term Pan-Africanism to hide the fact that this is an imperialist or neoliberal or neo-colonial project that is furthering the colonization and domination of Africa and educating young people to assist in that particular domination. So we have to be very wary of this as African people who are concerned about educating our youth for the future. Again, this is just a fellowship that the United States puts to the side, right? A bucket of funds that they put to the side for the purpose of identifying young and talented people on the African continent that they can bring to the West, that they can educate, indoctrinate, and essentially create a class of folks who are going to be loyal to the interests of the United States and Western capital on the African continent, right? So they're building an army of Black agents of Western imperialism, right? And we know that these objectives or these interests are in direct opposition with our interests as African people who desire to live free and desire to be self-determining, right? So we have to educate our children to prepare them to meet these new challenges. Right, so today with my presentation, I mentioned that I wanted to discuss Afrocentricity International's new youth engagement model that we're rolling out in the Philadelphia chapter. And this model, again, it was created right? So that we can establish a true grassroots development model, right? Not this imperialist thing that, the NGOs, the non-for-profits, and the government organizations are dumping funds down into the communities to identify, a group of people that they can essentially develop into a class of traders, right, to maintain the colony. No, we want to develop a true class of leaders, right? So I'm proposing a different engagement model for engaging our youth and developing them. And I refer to that model as the Garvey Leadership Initiative, not the Yale, it's Garvey, right? So I'm going to go into that, the Garvey Leadership Initiative. The mission, it's very simple, and this comes from the Honorable Amy Jacques Garvey. The mission of the Garvey Leadership Initiative is simple. It's a free and redeemed Africa achieved through organized purpose and organized action, right? So Garvey is very simply an acronym. It stands for the Global African Redemption Vanguard for Emerging Youth. The aim of the Garvey Leadership Initiative is to organize younger members of Afrocentricity International into cadet classes based upon their age. So we have 4 classes. The junior cubs range from ages 5 to 8. The rising cubs are 9 to 12. The junior cadets are ages 13 to 15, and the senior cadets are ages 16 to 18. So very similar to the UNIA and ECL. The cadet training model, and the focus of the GLI is to introduce younger members to African culture and values and history, organizational structure and military discipline, rituals of sovereign people, and self-protection, which is all meant to make them better leaders and protectors of their people. The whole focus of the Garvey Leadership Initiative is building a new generation of Garveyites, right? And we are building this generation based upon the 5 principles, or the 5 core principles of Garveyism, which are race first, race pride, nationhood, and self-determination and self-defense. Self-determination meaning do for self. The curriculum, simple. Everything that is needed to protect, build, feed, maintain, and lead a nation is what we're looking to inculcate in our children. So in closing, I'd just like to close with a quote from the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and the quote states, "To see your enemy and know him is a part of the complete education of man," right? So we have to understand that as long as Black people, right, as long as, injustice prevails in the world, as long as the resources of the world are not properly allocated, as long as Black people remain powerless and subjugated and dominated, war will forever plague this earth. So therefore, we have to prepare our children to meet the challenges of this, reality that we are currently engaged in. And if we're talking about education for self-determination, then that education truly has to be, entrenched in the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey and preparing our youth to meet the challenges that face them. Thank you very much, and I look forward to engaging with folks during the Q&A. Okay, peace.